Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Karen Johnson, the Earth Channel, here with you with another message for the week and focusing upon the 3041 channel, which is defined in the chart this week for this week. This chart, of course, using the tropical gates of the I Ching as laid out in human design with the sidereal zodiac, as I always do. A unique take on astrology and human design, one that I haven't seen anywhere else anyway. And if you would like to run your chart to see if you have this channel defined or either gate in this channel defined, you can go to humandesignamerica.com/chart. And if you don't know your birth time, you can use noon, and that will be a good starting point. The chart I always share with you, especially for the chart of the week, will have, of course, more information, as most of you know if you've seen any of my videos before. It not only has the human design chart, which has 9 centers, which are loosely parallel to chakras, although 3 of them are associated with what I believe we would call the solar plexus, at least in my interpretation. That's one more way that my interpretation is a little different from that of mainstream human design. And it's not overly important that we have a one-to-one relationship, apples to apples relationship, however you want to call that, with the chakras. This particular system has much to share with us, regardless of how you draw those parallels. And the human design system was channeled by Ra Uru Hu in the late 80s, but he did not come up with the I Ching, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, and that's one of the other big pieces of information that is shared with you very clearly, although it is, I know, a small graphic, so it can be a little hard to see the details. But in the charts that I share with you each week, you can see each of those 64 hexagrams, their number 1 through 64, as well as the yin and yang lines that make up those hexagrams. And I use a photo editing tool to overlay the sidereal zodiac upon those gates, which were originally channeled according to the tropical zodiac and originally overlaid with the tropical zodiac, which Western astrologers typically use. And I believe the hexagrams should stay where they are, as I've explained before, but the 12 signs of the zodiac should be in their sidereal placements because that's where the stars actually are and were. Although they will slowly change over time, 1 degree every 70 years, relative to the gates, since the gates are staying with that tropical alignment, which is where the solstices and equinoxes happen each year. They stay aligned with those rather than the stars. So, focusing upon the channel, the 3041 channel, it connects gates within the root center, which is much like the root chakra, as well as the emotional center, which is one of the centers that I associate with the solar plexus chakra. I think this is the last channel connected to the emotional center that we will cover in this 64-part series. It may be even more than 64 parts, we'll see. And so I want to thoroughly make sure that we cover all of the themes associated with the emotional center in this last one to do with the emotional center. It is a motor center, as I have mentioned before. It produces waves of energy. The root center is also a motor center, and it's sort of pulses of energy, or it's a more grounded energy, being the root center. That would make sense, right? But, you know, it's almost just something you have to experience as opposed to being able to describe it easily. But when it is turned on by something, some stimulus, some inspiration, whatever that might be, it can definitely produce energy. And then when it's not turned on by anything, it just sort of winds down. And there can be a sense of melancholy when that happens, if you have it defined. If you do not have it defined, the root center that is, you will tend to pick up on the root energies from other people who do have it defined, sometimes energies from weekly transits or, daily transits potentially as those occur. And you will tend to amplify that energy from that motor center. In a similar way, if you have the emotional center, the brown triangle on the right, I have the whole channel circled, of course, in the graphic I'm sharing, you will also amplify the energy associated with that motor center. However, it will be more of an emotional energy, making you empathic, as is the common understanding of that type of empathy, being an empathic person. And while I have both of these centers defined in my chart, my natal chart, I do not have this particular channel or either of these gates defined in my chart. The I Ching talks about the gate 30 as being the gate of the clinging fire, and gate 40 as being the gate of decrease. And similar to the body of knowledge known as the gene keys, I do not believe any of these gates are in and of themselves bad in any way. They all have what the gene keys calls the shadow side of things, which is the lowest expression. The gift and the siddhi is what the gene keys call those other expressions, those higher expressions up to the highest. And so I believe similarly that that is possible with each and every gate, each and every gene key, each and every hexagram, that we can choose and grow in how we express all of those, whether we have them defined or not. You can access these energies when you want, and I know that Gaia, Mother Earth, when I channel the message from her, has a lot to say about this particular theme this week, the root center and all of that. But before I get into that, this is a collective channel, and therefore I have experienced it to be somewhat similar to the other collective emotional channel, which is the 3536 channel, which I do have defined in my chart, and which I have already covered in a previous video, an emotional center as well, of course, or channel, excuse me. And there's a similarity to another channel as well, or a pair of channels potentially, that I have not covered either of those yet. And they are basically the mirror image of these channels on the other side of the chart. This emotional side representing the left side of the body, as if it was a chart of a body looking out toward you as you're looking at the screen. The 1648 channel is one of the other collective channels, but it's on the other side. It's not emotional. It's connected to what human design calls the splenic center. I associate more with the liver. And then there's the other one down there, which I cannot right now see or remember those numbers of those gates. But they are the ones on the outer side. And especially the 1648 is known to be as the channel when it is defined as creating the largest aura. Now, generators in general are known to create large auras, so I don't know if that's taken into account when that was said before. I don't recall where I heard it from. It may not necessarily be the same kind of aura associated with generators. The sacral center is the center that is defined in all generators' charts. It's the square right above the root center, and if it's defined, it'll be red in the chart. not in this week's chart. It is white, which any center that is open or undefined will be white. But so the aura associated with generators is that of a warm, enveloping, sort of fuzzy aura. The aura associated more so with the 1648 is more about awareness, intuition, and seeking out knowledge and potentially resources. I know in the I Ching, one of those gates, I can't remember which one at the moment, is known as the well, going to the well for resources, for water potentially, which is one of the most precious resources we have available to us from Mother Earth. And so while that 1648 channel can create a very large aura of awareness, maybe not quite so warm and fuzzy, but awareness nonetheless, I believe that the 3536 channel and also the channel we're covering this week, the 3041, because they're all collective, they also create very large auras like this. However, with being associated with the emotional center, as these two are, the 3041 and the 3536, are large at the top of their wave. And when, like I said before, every motor center has sort of an on-off or a spectrum to it in terms of how it produces energy. And the emotional center is no different. When the emotional center hits the down point, the lowest point in its wave, it can also feel much like melancholy. It can also feel like depression sometimes. Either way, I see it as sort of going into a cocoon and the aura getting smaller. Whereas when it's at a high, it's very large. So that 3536 channel I mentioned before is known as a channel that likes to explore, likes to travel and experience lots of different things. All collective channels love to experience different things, and particularly experience things with other people. So I think that's enough for me to share just as myself about this channel. I know that, like I said before, Gaia has a lot to share about it too. So I invite you to connect with me with her. And just briefly, I'm not going to make this video into any kind of advertisement, but I recently discovered a product that I am currently using right now. It's from earthing.com, and I'm kind of surprised I never found it before. But I will describe it this way. I have had a deep connection with Mother Earth for a long time. I have many earth signs in my natal chart. I have a defined root, as I mentioned before. I love looking at nature. My bachelor's degree is actually in landscape architecture. I love nature and Mother Earth. I love listening to nature sounds. I love the smells and scents of nature most of the time. I love eating healthy food, which comes from Mother Earth. And yet, excuse me, I, like most likely you, have been brought up and conditioned to not spend that much time in tactile contact with Mother Earth, with her soil, with her plants. I do have plenty of plants that I grow, but I don't spend that much time with my bare feet. I've always felt so grounded. Well, not always, but especially in the last few years, I've felt very grounded. I love to do my grounding meditations and emulating a tree in many ways. But I never really contacted her, and I live or that much, I should say. I spend plenty of time outdoors walking, but always usually with shoes on. There's so much to be careful of out there with not wearing shoes. But I recently found earthing.com and bought an earthing pad, which my feet are on right now. And it plugs in, although it's not powered. It has little plastic tongs where it would normally go into the power part of the outlet, but it does have a metal rod for the grounding part of it. And I've tested my outlet to make sure that it is grounded. And so this mat is grounding me right now, even though I am indoors at the moment. And so I encourage you to check this out. There's a whole movie at earthing.com/movie about it. It's kind of long. I watched it in 2 parts myself. But I truly feel more healing energy from Mother Earth being grounded in this way. And I'm so grateful to have discovered this technology to help with that grounding even more than I had already done. Okay, so let's really breathe and connect, which obviously helps even without these gadgets. And I encourage you to get outside as much as you can, barefoot, safely. And take a few deep breaths and close your eyes if you'd like. Hello. As Amy shared, she is physically grounded to me right at this moment. And it is so helpful for you all to make contact in a conducive way, a conductive way to me as much as you can, especially in today's world where there are so many electronic gadgets that we use, often for great purpose, such as bringing these messages out to many people. And yet that electric charge can easily build up in your physical bodies. There is so much to be gained by this. I, Gaia, Mother Earth, have always had everything you need. I produce food for you, and through grounding, through your physical contact with me, I will provide healing for you. More than you realized was possible. If you watch the movie that Amy mentioned, you will see how so many of your ailments can just fall away the more you contact me physically. And this channel that Amy has highlighted for this week, the 3041. Last week I mentioned that I have allied myself with the Antarians and the Arcturians. The Antarians being those who inspired Lao Tzu to come up with the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching and the Book of Changes. It is a construct. And yet there is no less value from that fact, based upon that fact. These 64 hexagrams mirror the cycles of nature. And the more of you humans who adhere to any one construct, the more power it will have. And the more you all come together with me, Gaia, Mother Earth, the more power still will it have. And so that is why the I Ching is so powerful in any of the ways that you wish to use it or look at it, observe it, contemplate it. It is the result of many people coming together, as well as my cycles coming together in a way that can be understood, a coherent way, a way that is ordered and can make sense. And so in that way, it is also heart-centered and expansive. It gives a way to embrace diversity, and as such can also bring together the most people, because everyone can find the many aspects of themselves within this construct most easily. Gate 30, the hexagram of the clinging fire, speaks to recognizing the power that is in me, nature. And once you do recognize it, realizing that that same power is within you. For you are part of me, just as we are all part of Source. And that same power that is within Source is also within us. And gate 41, speaking to decrease. While humankind and society has found itself in a place within a cycle where decrease does seem like a bad thing, and there are ways that hexagrams have been interpreted to be bad before, but we are here now to remind you that it does not have to be so. Decrease signifies a decrease within the visual and perhaps tactile, tangible realms. But just because you can't see something or even touch it necessarily, hold it in your hands, does not mean that it is not there. Within me, within the earth, to be fully within me as a seed, it is dark. Just as in outer space, it is dark. That darkness does not mean that it is bad or evil, however. It simply means that it is a mystery. It is not visible. It is not necessarily tactile or understandable to the human mind in the moment. Of course, humans have studied soil and plants and the way they grow from seeds, so there is some understanding there. But even still, if you have ever planted a seed and waited and watched for the sprout to come up above the soil, you know what a miracle that can seem to be. And so, just as with this metaphor, sometimes without awareness, without love, without heart awareness, our actions can come from that same shadow expression. And yet, when we open the eyes of our hearts to see that which our physical eyes cannot see, that is when the light goes into those places that once were dark. And so I encourage you all, every human heart watching this video, reading this message, to come together with your fellow humans in unity. The unity that encompasses great diversity, as with this construct, and come together with me, Gaia, Mother Earth, to create the highest expression of this world possible, for us all to perpetuate and spread healing to others, spread love, with or without words, to hold space for a vibrant earth, one where we listen for what is needed, what do we need, how can we come together and populate this beautiful world with more and more nourishment, enrichment, the kinds of material expressions of love that we all need, like food, like clean water, like clean air. And don't be afraid to look at the ways of decrease, of decomposition, of composting, for it is through composting and decay even that life is enriched, life is nourished. Look for those places in your life, those leaves that are ready to pass on back to me, Mother Earth. Let them go and let new shoots sprout. Deep breath. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, beloveds. Thank you for watching, subscribing, liking, sharing, and clicking the bell button to be notified when the new weekly message